Starting off this countdown, we have New York. New York, the concrete jungle where dreams are made of, is at risk. The main reason being, it's built on an island. Rising sea levels and islands do not mix. It's predicted that the sea level may rise 4 to 8 inches over the next decade. And you may be like, big deal. Well, a 5-foot rise means that LaGuardia Airport and portions of Manhattan would be underwater. By 2100, most of New York could be underwater. Coming in at number 9, we have Bangladesh. By 2050, it is believed that 17% of Bangladesh's land will be flooded, leaving 18 million citizens homeless. Now, historically, people in Bangladesh have been able to work around seasonal flooding. When water levels rise, farmers would stop their food production and people would seek work other places, and then they would return home. But soon, that won't be an option for them. Soon, they will have even more extreme seasonal floods. But also, they might be hit with more disastrous storms and high tides. Typically, that only occurs for them once each decade. But by 2100, it could be a regular thing, occurring 3 to 15 times a year. Soon, they're going to be forced out of their homes. Moving on at number 8, we have Miami, Florida. Conditions are getting so bad in Miami that the city may have to soon raise its structures to stay above water. In fact, environmental writer Jeff Goodall said, and I quote, "There's virtually no scenario under which you can imagine Miami existing at the end of the century. Isn't that scary?" In fact, it's believed the sea level could rise anywhere from 10 to 30 feet by the end of this century. Soon, the flooding will take over the beaches. It'll be too expensive for the government to maintain, so they'll just disappear. A reason for this is because the ground under is largely porous limestone, so eventually water will just rise up through it and then flood the land. Now, the city has taken some measures like raising roads, installing pumps, but it still might not be enough. So if you've ever wanted to go to Miami, you better take a visit soon. Coming in at number 7, we have Key West, Florida. Honestly, a lot of areas in Florida are at risk. In fact, Key West is said to be one of the first US cities to start flooding due to the rising sea levels. Statistics show that the sea level has risen 9 inches over the past century. By 2060, it is believed that over 60% of the livable land there will have been flooded. In 2100, 95% of livable land will be flooded. Those are some pretty terrifying statistics. Moving on at number 6, we have Charleston, Central, South Carolina. Studies show that the sea levels in Charleston have risen around 12 inches over the past 100 years. The rate at which it's going is going faster and faster. 5 of the 12 inches have been blamed on subsidence. In the 1970s, Charleston would get around 2 days of flooding per year. Well, now it's believed that flooding would become a regular thing by 2045. In fact, the floods experienced in South Carolina have increased 75% since 2000. And because of Charleston's low elevation, it's very vulnerable to flooding. There are already 90,000 properties at risk from the tidal floodings in South Carolina. By 2060, it's believed that around a quarter of the livable land in Charleston will be underwater, over half by 2100. Good news though is that the state is planning to put in $2 billion towards sea level rising solutions, which would include raising roads, seawalls, and drainage improvements. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Marshall Islands. The Marshall Islands are a bunch of volcanic islands and coral atolls located in the Central Pacific Ocean. Sadly, they're at a huge risk of being wiped out completely. It's said that by 2035, some of the Marshall Islands will be completely submerged. Others will no longer have drinking water because their water will become contaminated with salt water. As a result, the 58,000 people living there will be forced to find a new place to live. The other option is to build new artificial islands for the residents to live on. But that would take years and would be very costly. It probably wouldn't be done in time for the residents to move. If nothing is done to stop this by 2045, they will be completely underwater. Coming in at number 4, we have Fiji. Man, Fiji is so beautiful and I've always wanted to go there. Looks like we all better take a trip ASAP because the sea level has been dramatically rising. This is due to the bad cyclones, erosion, and flooding they experience there. In fact, the sea levels have been rising an average of 6 millimeters a year since 1993. Then in 2012, an entire village had to abandon their homes and move to higher grounds because of the flooding. Other villages claim they have lost 12 to 20 meters of shoreline due to the sea levels rising. By 2050, sea levels are expected to rise up to 43 centimeters. Not only that, but the coral there is at risk. The rising ocean temperatures are damaging the coral reefs, causing coral bleaching. This turns the coral white, making them more vulnerable to disease. It's really sad and scary. In our third spot, we have New Orleans. So personally, I say New Orleans, but I think it's pronounced New Orleans. You guys came at me one time in the comments section, so just let me know which way it is. Parts of New Orleans is sinking at a rate of 2 inches per year. Studies show that by 2100, it could be underwater. Some parts are already 15 feet below sea level. In 2005, they were hit with the disastrous Hurricane Katrina, which caused a lot of destruction and flooding. But they managed to recover over the years. But its location on a river delta increases their exposure to sea level rise and flooding. In 2016, a study conducted by NASA found that parts of New Orleans were sinking at a rate of 2 inches per year. If this keeps up, they will be underwater by 2100. Moving on to number 2, we have Bangkok. Bangkok is sinking at a rate of more than 1 to 2 centimeters a year. Currently, it is only 0.5 to 2 meters above water. Much of Bangkok is already lower than the sea level. So it's believed that it could be fully below sea level by 2030. They only have 10 years to come up with a solution to this problem, or else many residents will be left homeless. A reason why this is happening is because the metropolitan area was built on what was formerly marshland. That, combined with years of excessive groundwater pumping and the constant building, have put a strain on the foundation. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Jakarta, Indonesia. Jakarta is said to be the world's fastest sinking city. North Jakarta has sunk 2.5 meters in 10 years, and now it's sinking 25 centimeters a year in some parts. Research shows that by 2050, 95% of North Jakarta will be submerged underwater. In fact, currently almost half of the city is now below sea level. Many buildings are already being flooded. They have tried to repair the buildings from these floods, but they just keep getting damaged, and so they're forced to evacuate. So the 13 rivers running through Jakarta do play a role in this problem. But nowadays, with climate change, it just keeps getting worse. The Indonesian government has a plan in place to move the capital onto the island of Java to protect 10 million residents from this flooding. But this move would take 10 years and cost $33 billion. So it's a very sad and tragic reality.
Starting off our list at our number 10 spot, we have Homs. Homs is located on the Mediterranean coast of Libya and is the home to one of the world's heritage sites, which is Leptis Magna. Leptis Magna was a very prominent city in the Carthaginian Empire and was apparently one of the most beautiful cities, filled with markets, public monuments, and residential areas, not to mention the harbor. It is said to be one of the best preserved sites anywhere, which is incredible. There is already regular flooding in this area, so with a prediction of the sea level rising as much as 3 feet in the area within the coming decades, it is a place that is at a great risk of being submerged sooner rather than later, or at the very least, widely inaccessible. In our number 9 spot today, we have London. London is of course located in England, and the southern parts of the city could end up being submerged in water in just a short 30 years from now. Scientists studying climate change are warning of the possibilities and even created an interactive map to show their current predictions of the areas of London that will see the greatest amounts of flooding. The places that are the most at risk are those around the Thames, with things included such as Big Ben, the Houses of Parliament, the Tower of London, King's College, as well as many portions of the underground subway system. Or the tube. The interactive map I mentioned before includes the rising sea levels but does not take into account the possibilities or potential frequency of big storms, potential future erosion, inland flooding, or any contributions from rainfalls or rivers, so it is possible that these areas could be at a greater risk than we even know. In our number 8 spot today, we have Atlantic City. Atlantic City is located in New Jersey and is known for its casinos, boardwalk, and beaches. In fact, Atlantic City was apparently the inspiration for the American version of Monopoly, which is something I didn't know. But as it turns out, all the gamblers in the AC are going to have to head to the Nevada deserts because New Jersey is an area that is going to come into trouble due to the rising sea levels. The levels around Atlantic City have risen 12 inches since 1950, but the speed of the rise has been greatly rapidly accelerating, and it now sees a rise of over 1 inch every 5 years. That may not seem like a lot, but it has a huge impact on the city, and over time, things like this certainly add up. Not only are the sea levels rising, but the land is also sinking and the shorelines are eroding, which all together are causing this acceleration. Not only is this a huge problem for the residents there, but also for the many species of wildlife that rely on these coastal habitats. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Daintree Forest. This rainforest is located in Queensland, Australia, close to the eastern coastline. This is one area that is on the track to be consumed by rising sea levels, as well as the cities and towns immediately surrounding it, such as Port Douglas, which lies just south. Losing any area to rising sea levels usually isn't a good thing, but this one will be a particularly great loss, as this rainforest is one of the oldest surviving ones on Earth. The loss of this area will include the ancient plants that it contains, some of which represent some of the earliest known plants on Earth. This rainforest is also the home to many different animal species, and it is extremely important to the conservation of biological diversity. With many areas on the path to being threatened with rising sea levels, we humans are going to have to get a bit better at sharing our Earth with the other species who also call it home. In our number 6 spot today, we have Ravenna. Ravenna is located in Italy in the Emilia-Romagna region and is connected to the Adriatic Sea via the Candiano Canal. It is the home to and well known for its late Roman architecture, but it is also the home to the most important group of Byzantine art anywhere outside of Istanbul itself. This art includes mosaics, sculptures, decorative stones, as well as metalworks and ceramics, most of which are housed in the early Christian mausoleums and basilicas. Whether interested in art, history, or Christianity, or really none of the above, these are pieces from history that would be tragic for us to lose. The city itself holds an important historical significance, as it was once the capital of the Western Roman Empire. Unfortunately, it is believed that this is a place that could be submerged in water, with the treasures being flooded as early as 2050. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Elephanta Caves. The Elephanta Caves are a collection of cave temples that are located on Elephanta Island in the Mumbai harbor, about 10 kilometers east of Mumbai. Like I just mentioned, these caves are located on an island, so it is obviously surrounded by water, which due to the rising sea levels is proving to be a detriment. There are many historic sites in the area, but these caves are of the most precious and are actually a World Heritage Site. The caves consist of 5 separate ones that are all filled with monumental Hindu religious carvings, as well as smaller Buddhist monuments. A lot of the artwork displayed in the caves has been badly damaged over the years, but that does not mean it wouldn't be devastating to lose. This area is not only a popular tourist destination, but it is an important location for those who practice Hinduism and Buddhism, and it would be a great loss in both a historical sense as well as a religious and spiritual sense. In our number 4 spot today, we have Galveston. Galveston is located in Texas and is a resort and port city that is a popular weekend family tourist destination, as well as a common cruise ship docking spot. The beaches and botanical gardens really work to bring people in, but like everything else on this list, what makes it so exciting and inviting just might also be the cause for its demise. It is said that by 2060, around half of all of the livable land in Galveston is going to be flooded, and if this wasn't already bad enough, it is said by the year 2100, over 90% of the land will be submerged underwater. That's wild. I guess it's time to make those plans if you've been wanting to check it out, because who knows how much time is really left at this point. I guess those cruise ships are gonna have to find somewhere else to dock. In our number 3 spot today, we have Tybee Island. Tybee Island is located in Georgia, not too far from Savannah. The island is a barrier island, small city, and super popular spot for beach trips, as well as sightseeing with the light station and museum located there. The island, however, is in danger of losing significant portions due to rising sea levels. It has been calculated that around 30% of the livable land on the island will be flooded by 2060. The island isn't the only place at risk though, as Savannah is also on track to be seeing some of the same kinds of flooding. Savannah does happen to be more inland, however, so it might have more time, and while it's possible that a good amount of the city can be saved, there are gorgeous old historical homes on the edge of the water that most likely won't make it another century. In our number 2 spot today, we have Honolulu. This popular Hawaiian destination spot is one of the most at at-risk places of being submerged in water due to the rising sea levels. Honolulu is the capital of the Hawaiian state, and I mean, considering the entire state is made up of islands, all of Hawaii really is at stake here. Even a small rise in sea level is noticed here, as it is estimated that an inch of rising sea results in losing 8 feet of shoreline. This is a massive issue, as sea levels are being predicted to rise several feet in the next decade alone. 2/3 of the Hawaiian population live on the island that is home to Honolulu, so it is obvious that this is going to cause a lot of major problems for the residents there. In our number 1 spot today we have Tabasco. Tabasco is located in Mexico with a coastline on the Gulf. Tabasco is low and flat, so it has been no stranger to flooding over the years, but the issue is seemingly only growing. The region is covered in both wetlands and forest, so the floods it usually sees are seasonal, but unfortunately rising sea levels are bringing it to the brink of being submerged. Not only would this be devastating to the variety of life that calls this area home, but it would also threaten the archaeological sites located here, such as some of the Mayan ruins. I briefly mentioned that this area is low, but it's so low that it is only currently 1 meter above sea level, which means that even the smallest rises in the level of the sea have a huge impact. Without some guidelines and a plan to protect this coastal zone, things unfortunately aren't looking too good right now. Starting off in our number 10 spot we have Venice. Scientists have warned that if something doesn't change soon, Venice is on track to be submerged in water by 2100. The Mediterranean Sea is on the rise and is predicted to see a growth of 140 centimeters or 4 feet in the next century, which may not seem like a lot, but this would be devastating to coastal cities. Not only has it been said for years that Venice is sinking, but the city has also been seeing an increase in some of the worst floods in its history, which surely cannot be a good sign. Not only is the city and its residents at risk, but the historical architecture of the city is also facing some troubles, even now with just the floods the city is having. Italy did begin to build flood barriers all the way back in 2003, and the work was supposed to be completed a decade ago, but it is looking like it might take until next year, if not longer, to complete the work. During the worst time for flooding in the city, water levels are seen rising as much as 4 feet, which has the city building wooden catwalks so that people can still get around the flood instead of having to go directly through it. In our number 9 spot today we have Hoboken. The majority of New Jersey is at risk of extreme and detrimental flooding, but Hoboken is most definitely one of the places at the highest risk. In fact, it is ranked number 2 on a list of communities in America with the greatest percentage of homes at risk of chronic flooding. It is currently estimated that almost 30% of the population has a home that is at risk for flooding by 2060 alone, and that number jumps to 44% by 2100. That is a huge deal in a super short amount of time. The city is already seeing the negative effects of the rising sea levels, with much more frequent floods and sewer backups. The rise in sea level is causing the land to sink, and saltwater is beginning to intrude on the groundwater. Not only is the coast expected to see a 1-foot rise in the sea level by 2050, but the city is also at much greater risk for huge storms. In our number 8 spot today we have Lagos. Lagos, Nigeria is the home to over 24 million people, and it is also one of the most at-risk places due to the rising sea levels. The streets of the city are already often flooded, in part due to the city's issue with garbage, which is often littered in the streets and then found clogging drains during heavy rainfall. Because of climate change, the city is expected to see less rainfall overall, but more intense storms when it does rain, which is a major cause for concern, especially when coupled with the eroding coastlines and rising seas. In a 2012 study from the University of Plymouth, it was said that a rising sea level of only 3 feet would have catastrophic effects on this region. This is a huge issue because global sea levels are expected to rise by at least 4 feet by the end of the century, which means that the issues Lagos are currently facing are only going to get worse if something isn't done, and fast. In our number 7 spot today we have Hilton Head Island. Hilton Head Island is located in South Carolina and is a part of the Low Country region. It is known best for its Atlantic beaches and golf courses, as well as the Harbortown Lighthouse and Museum that can be found on the southwest tip of the island. There is also a wildlife refuge located located on the island, which hosts animals like deer, alligators, and birds. Unfortunately, like most coastal towns and islands, all of this beauty and the things it has to offer are under severe threat due to the rising sea levels. It is currently estimated that 25.6% of the habitable land on the island will be underwater by 2060, and that number is jumping up to 57.6 by 2100. This means that almost 24% of the homes on the island are at risk for flooding by 2060, and just under 60% of homes by 2100. That is absolutely devastating for the community and the people that live there, not to mention all of the wildlife that call the island home as well. In our number 6 spot today we have Alexandria. Alexandria is a Mediterranean port city that is located in Egypt and is the 7th largest city in Africa. The city has strong ancient history ties as it was founded by Alexander the Great, and it was once connected to a small island called Pharos. Pharos once housed a lighthouse that was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This area was thought to be extremely promising because of its coastal location, and it proved to be just that, as well as an important industrial center because of its natural gas and oil pipelines. But now some of the things that once made it so enticing might be what brings it to its demise. The beaches of Alexandria have already been seen disappearing because of the rising sea levels. There have been estimations that the Mediterranean Sea will see rises of around 2 feet by 2100. This may not seem like a lot, but considering the effects have been both seen and felt already, who knows what things will be like with that kind of change on the near horizon. In our number 5 spot today we have Chesapeake. Chesapeake in Virginia is one of the places with the highest threat of being submerged in water, but really all of Virginia is under this threat. Not only are the sea levels rising, as we all well know at this point, but the land of Virginia is sinking at a rate of 1 inch every 10 years. This may not seem like a lot, but these things coupled together only makes the situation worse. The sea level rising is only speeding up too. Before it took 26 years for the sea level in the area to rise 6 inches, but experts are estimating that the next 6 inches will only take 13 years this time. The area is sometimes now even facing flooding when there is no rain because of the pressure from the levels as well as higher tides. The levels are also a problem when facing things like hurricanes, as it can make them even worse, as if a hurricane wasn't already bad enough. It is estimated that what was once every 100-year storm surges will soon turn into once every 10-year surges, or even more frequent by the year 2050, which is approaching rapidly and will only further progress the issues these areas are seeing. In our number 4 spot today we have California. There was a time in California where, while other places were beginning to see the effects of the rising sea levels, California was sitting pretty, enjoying the seemingly endless summer with decades of favorable winds and cooler, calmer waters, but that is rapidly changing due to something that scientists call sea level rise suppression. California is known for its lavish homes built as close to the water as one could get, but as it turns out, those with homes more inland probably made a lot better of a decision in the long run. In the last 100 years, the sea level in California rose less than 9 inches, but by the end of this century it could rise as much as 9 feet. With California mostly focusing on the wildfire and drought effects of climate change, which is of course just as much of an imminent threat, it seems as though the threats of the rising sea levels are slipping through the cracks. The coastline is rapidly eroding, and not only are the multi-million-dollar homes at risk, but so are things like the Pacific Coast Highway and the rail line to San Diego. I mean, take Balboa Island for example. It's barely above sea level as it is, and now they're facing floods even if the tide just simply gets too high. Unfortunately, sometimes these things move quicker than we can even keep up with. In our number 3 spot today we have Rotterdam. Rotterdam is located in the Netherlands, which is well known for being a leading country when it comes to things like battling floods, and with the threats currently facing the province, they're doing what they can to adapt. The biggest protection they currently have is a dam that closes once storm surges exceed 3 meters in height. At this point they haven't had to use this dam very much. Actually only twice in 22 years, but experts are saying that might quickly get bumped up to at least once annually. The entire area has faced changes so as to more efficiently mitigate flooding, such as parking garages being turned into emergency reservoirs, removing concrete paving in gardens and neighborhoods to increase water absorption capacity. Just really smart moves that continue to help the residents live their lives without the imminent threat of flood. Despite everything that they're doing, however, this is still not enough to contain the expected 1 to 2 meter rise in sea levels in the area by 2100. If this were the case, that would put about 98% of the population underwater by that year. I guess this goes to show that we can do as much as we want to help prevent floods, but Mother Nature is just more powerful than we are. In our number 2 spot today we have Manila. Manila is located in the Philippines, and it is a place that has one of the highest risks of going underwater. In fact, the risk is so high that a village just 17 kilometers north of it has already been submerged. This village is sinking at a rate of around 4 centimeters every year, and the 100 families that used to live there have now dwindled down to 40 because of the circumstances. In this area, the sea levels are rising at a rate 4 times faster than the global average, and we know how fast the global average is already rising, so that is just unbelievable. Other than the rising sea, this area also faces issues like earthquakes and typhoons, which can cause floods to these kinds of coastal areas. The area is already seeing too many tropical storms a year, but that number is only expected to increase because of climate change. They're also facing land subsidence, which is thought to be from excessive groundwater extraction, which only furthers all of these issues. Manila has a population of around 13.9 million people, not to mention the wildlife that also call the area home, so the risk of flooding is most certainly going to have a huge impact on a high number of people. In our number 1 spot today we have Yangon. Yangon in Myanmar is at an extreme risk for being submerged in water, which should come as no surprise considering Myanmar is considered one of the countries most vulnerable to climate change in the entire world. Throughout the years, the area has already seen mass amounts of record-breaking floods, stronger storms, and unpredictable rainfall, and this, coupled with the experts' predictions that sea levels in the area are going to rise from 40 to 100 centimeters by 2080, is very dangerous, and things really aren't looking good. A 50 centimeter increase would lose 10 kilometers of land in the low-lying areas. With all of the other effects of climate change taking place and not only taking the lives of thousands of residents, but displacing even more, this is an area that is under immediate threat, more than a lot of the other areas we've discussed today. The residents in this area depend on the natural resources and ecosystems for their economy, so losing areas of land is devastating for a multitude of reasons.